Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to the Blue Frontier. Everton get back to winning ways at the Hill Dickinson Stadium with a 2-0 win over Fulham. Could have been a lot more with 3 goals ruled out for offside, but we'll get into the dissection of the match. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Like, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on socials. All of the links will be in the description. James here, joined by Ryan and Shan to get into things, and we'll start with our summary quote of the day. It's my turn to choose, and I went with Tim from our Discord, who said, "Comprehensive win, won the midfield battle for nearly the entire game. Barry helped us to keep possession many times. When you see the ball hit their net 5 times and see it hit ours 0, you're probably going to win." Probably for Everton is, you won't say definitely, but they did pull it out today in a really good comprehensive performance, as Tim said. So with that, we'll get into our leading talking points for the match. And I think the big one going into today when the lineup came out was, of course, the change, dropping Jake O'Brien in favor of James Garner at right back. And I think overall it's fair to say that gave Everton quite a bit more balance throughout the entire team.
Yeah, so like you said, James, it for sure gave us more balance. It just felt like we weren't overloaded on one side, which allowed us to, I think, have a little bit more play in the middle of the field as well as be able to distribute. It didn't feel like Grealish was just completely, the dominating figure. It was just good to share some of that balance. And then, of course, we'll get into kind of Garner's match as a whole, but it really provided a little bit more spark on the offensive end for us.
I think it also allowed Dewsbury Hall to float a little bit more over to Jack's side and combine with him a little bit and feed him the ball. I thought that was more effective. Granted, Dewsbury Hall was all over the place today, much to his credit. And the midfield, we'll talk about that in a second, kind of allowed Gana to get up there but not have to push as high. He just saw opportunities. Everton attacked 38% down the left, 40% down the right. So that sounds pretty good. The only concern there is Mikalenko seems like he recognized that and really went defensive today. And you saw some limitations. But the squad has limitations. I mean, you can't really argue that, But yeah, I mean, it was certainly better balance. It's funny, Garner still gave the ball away a lot, but he was also playing in different positions off set pieces and things like that. So I think the number 2, kind of big talking point to me going into this was the David Moyes, Marco Silva tactical battle, because you knew Moyes had to make some changes. It was inevitable, right? And I think the biggest thing we talked about right back, but the midfield changes were significant too. You add another person to the midfield since Garner comes out. You're not sure how that's going to go. We know Tim the Enchanter definitely has some discipline issues, but he's a physical specimen. And when we're in possession, he does fine. So would we have enough of the ball for that to be balanced out? And I think there's a great quote in here by Kevin Dyer that I'm going to read that alludes to some of the issues with Moyes in terms of making changes. We'll get to that in a second. So I quote, "Vital win over a side who've stood still over the summer plus gotten weaker. In control throughout. Should have been a commanding victory in reality. Garner to right back gave balance." Agreed. It's like he read what we were going to write. Plus Tim some legs in midfield. KDH stepped up after some ho-hum outings. Good timing on the roll. Urabunum sub. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, I think it worked today. Maybe that was because Fulham was poor. But I think another contributing factor too was that Barry really kind of came back into the match a little bit and allowed himself some flexibility and contributed a little bit more kind of in the build-up. Do we not agree?
Yeah, fully agree. I think it was interesting to see Moyes keep Barry in. I think it was the right decision ultimately after yanking him midway through the second half last week. We know that he had changed his profile picture on social media to a picture of him on the bench. And nevertheless, Moyes trusts him enough to give him the start in a match like today. And I think it was kind of just what Everton needed up front. In a game where we were more controlling, more possession, Barry served as kind of a focal point, but also offered a lot in terms of retaining possession, moving around, and got himself in some really good positions. I think you're seeing Barry get more comfortable as part of this Everton team, unsurprisingly, as he continues to get minutes. So I thought it was great and really probably one of his better performances, maybe his best performance in an Everton shirt so far.
Yeah, some of the layoffs were nice, but I think more importantly is the diversity of runs he made really had to have the center backs a little bit on edge. Bassey had to track him in wide areas at certain times. That opens up things. And just he's a little more agile, a little quicker, and maybe a little better on the ball than Beto. So when he has those opportunities, he's able to kind of play a little bit more with everyone else. Beto's better usage is if we're playing behind the ball, kind of running behind it. And we were a little more front foot today, and I thought it was the right choice.
Yeah, and then that kind of brings us into the actual lineups, and we've discussed Everton's at length. Of course, James mentioned it with the midfield change, but you look at Fulham, and I think Kevin's comment kind of, speaks to Fulham, a side that really hasn't invested much. Really, all their business was done on deadline day, as we talked about in the PL preview. Kevin's really the main kind of theater for them in regards to the transfer window, and I think he's going to do a good job for them as the season goes on, and he's really gotten the starting spot after coming in the summer from Shakhtar. But you look at just the team, it's very much the same Marco Silva team that you've seen throughout the years. I think a lot of solid contributors. I mean, we can kind of go through the team, but really, of course, Alex Iwobi, Everton fans know him really well. But if you look at that team on paper, it's pretty just technically sound, but I wouldn't say very athletic in any ways. Of course, Kenny Tete, what could have been for us would have really filled a nice hole. I think you saw just the matchup with him and Jack. Did a pretty good job on Jack, in my opinion. But, you look at the forwards, right? I think they're still struggling to kind of find a starting forward just, like us. But then at the same time, I just don't think they're going to get, the attacking firepower that they have from the bench. So I think from our standpoints going into this game, I think we felt pretty good from a defensive standpoint on their score sheet, given some of the issues we've been having recently. It's just a matter of, can we score some goals?
And when you look at how the two teams would line up against one another, I think following the match, Tark and Keane, the center halves against Raul Jimenez, was an interesting one. We know that this Everton backline struggles against the threat in behind, defending in space, but Raul Jimenez is not that threat. He's not going to necessarily make those kinds of runs. And I think that, honestly, that changed the whole dynamic of the match and really allowed Everton to push forward, to press with intensity, because there wasn't that threat of getting beat long or in behind. And I think, really, at the end of the day, that gave us a large element of control. I think Fulham's execution left a lot to be desired, but there were some other matchups that were really interesting as well.
Yeah, the next one, of course, Tierno Barry and Calvin Bassey, they had a really fun time as the match went on. Quite some theatrics by both of them. A lot of diving, a lot of flopping. One performance that Michael Phelps would have had a lot of critique on just as the match went on, but both of them got their dives in. It was nice for Tierno to kind of learn after Bassey, kind of flopped a few times to give him a few, and he ended up getting a call or so from it. So good for Tierno.
I think the third matchup, and it's funny, some of these matchups, it didn't really play out that way. I think when we get into the match, like the real factors, I think Tarquin Jimenez factor is really important. That Keane's still a little late kind of running in between the lines there, but for the most part, that allows him to play higher. I think this last one, Garner versus Kevin, was an interesting one. Kevin's a little bit right-footed, but still a bit of a handful out in space, and you saw a couple times where he absolutely rinsed Garner and created a couple big chances. Not as many as maybe you would think, and I think there were some other factors that prevented Fulham's ability to really feed him the ball. And also credit to Njai for defending as well as he did too. Once again, there were times where we were playing almost like a medium block, where he was playing almost as a wing back. And credit to Moyes as well too. I mean, he understands what the other team's going to do. Kevin being in there is a threat for them. They have a couple threats from wide areas, and for the most part, we handled that pretty darn well. So I can't really point to any of these other than that first matchup being the real differentiator. I think also, just looking into this, one thing we've seen so far from Everton is getting to a good start, starting off the match very well, especially at home. And I think Jedi Robinson being out for Fulham too kind of gives them a little lack of a focal point from those wide areas. If you have him out there, now suddenly Tete doesn't have to be as high. Kevin can maybe duck into the half space. Maybe Iwobi combines with him a little bit better. But it wasn't there, and we were on the front foot right away.
Yeah, there were almost right off the bat within the first 5-6 minutes, 3 good chances for Everton. And Barry is kind of at the center of all of them. He had a chance on a cross very early on, and then Dewsbury Hall finds him with a through ball that he just can't quite get to, but promising signs. And then Njai has this amazing left-footed cross where this is the header that Barry can't quite get down but heads over the bar. But again, within the first 6 or 7 minutes, Everton clearly exerting control, looking to score an early goal. and it wouldn't be long before the first of the ruled out goals would come through.
But the truth of the matter was that you could tell that Fulham were struggling a little bit with the pressure. Anderson's very good on the ball. He didn't look great. I don't think you would expect Sander Berger to come in there and take command, but he really never did that. I don't think he was tidy with the ball, but and so they were stuck back. Lino is a problem, I think, for them if they're going to build out of the back. He is not precise with his passing. He's a good shot stopper, and I think that's what we saw. Lucic in particular is a guy that, if he's not in there winning tackles and stuff, that midfield is a problem for them. And I think this moment, the 11th minute, was really important for Everton.
Yeah, this definitely changed things throughout the first half. He picks up that yellow for taking Dewsbury Hall down after Dewsbury Hall looked like he was in through to drive towards goal. So it's kind of a smart tactical foul and a smart yellow. And it was also a very good involvement by Tierno Barry, the header to play Dewsbury Hall into space in the first place. It leads to Garner with a really nice free kick, well taken. But that yellow card would loom large for the remainder of the first half for sure, and it felt like something Everton would really try to key in on and exploit.
And the midfield looked strong, albeit aggressive. And you could tell there were opportunities maybe for Fulham to get the ball through the midfield. About halfway through the first half, there were some strange stoppages, but Iwobi does this kind of little flick at one point and cuts out our entire midfield. And then he finds a shot. He makes a nice play kind of in the 33rd as well for an opportunity for them. But those moments were not as often as you would think. Like, you could see the space between the lines, and I attribute a lot of that to Jimenez not being as much of a threat running back. And Keane's not that aggressive. It was a little role reversal where Keane was really tracking him and Tar could play back a little bit, didn't have to be the aggressor, which I think is the better dynamic, maybe not for Michael Keane, although he played very well. But what's Jimenez going to do? And if they're starting so far deep and they can't push people up and they're having to drop guys like Iwobi back to help with the buildup, Jimenez isn't going to pivot around and play someone through because they're not there. So credit to Everton for really swarming, being active, being physical in the midfield, and really being on the front foot for the greater part of the first half. Really, Fulham's only real chance came in the 38th. And, I guess Barry grabs the shirt of Tete, but this is happening all throughout the first half, and I can't help but think there's a little bit of a double standard.
It was weird. It was kind of a weird half in itself, right? Because Everton, as we mentioned, just come out the gates flying.
Probably the first 15,
20 minutes. Yeah, and then to Anderson, he's one of the best long ball passers in the Premier League, and he was just awful today. I don't understand how just some of their guys were just, and that's what really took away some of their threat. So you see the Iwobi moment, as you talked about, Ryan, that obviously carves our midfield apart, but outside of just those one or two moments, they had a little bit of possession of play, but they couldn't complete some of these long passes. So what that ended up kind of just enabling them to have to do is just kind of play very acute passes to one another, and it just wasn't working today. So credit to us, and credit to I think the midfield of Tim and Gana, because I think from Gana's point of view, he was everywhere today, right? So you saw it, as well as Kieran Dewsbury Hall. Can't give him enough credit today, just because the pressing also from our standpoint was a lot more compact and a lot better. And as you mentioned, Leno was just not ready for it. And so then, as we mentioned, I think we skipped this, but going into our first offside goal, right, where, Jordan Pickford, you talk about great distribution, an incredible long ball to Jack Grealish, good switch of play, a very good cross. It didn't look like offside on the moment, but it's kind of one of Njai's first few touches that ends up being offsides, and Barry scores, and all of us are just so excited for him. It just felt like the weight of the world was off his shoulders, and of course VAR comes into play and it's offside, and it's unfortunate because it's just so marginal, right? But from our standpoint, it's still just really good, I think, interplay from us, and it just kind of makes you feel like it's coming.
That's not the first time, though, Njai today got offsides.
No.
He didn't need to. And that's a little disappointing to me. I know he's not a natural right winger, but, he was playing very wide at times, and all you have to do is take two steps to your left. There was one big switch where he got called offside in the second half where I'm like, you don't have to be that way. So, it's fair to be critical as one of our best players, but I think that's that's part of the issue. And look, these goals being disallowed were frustrating. I think, talk about the one in the 41st minute. I mean, this is one where, the ball comes in swinging, big bender, but Tark is clearly off at this moment. Now, if he snaps back a half a second earlier, it probably doesn't matter. Like, he's probably going to still be able to get ahead on this one anyway. But it was off, so I can't really argue with either of these two decisions, but they're frustrating.
And it was odd on the second one how long, because it's a pretty lengthy build-up in the box before Tark finally thumps it in. It bounces around. There's a couple clearances, and then Tark's there to finish it, but he's off like way earlier. I get that's the rule. You let him play on, but it felt very frustrating to see the replay where there's so much that happens between him being off and the goal. But again, you felt like it was coming because you're getting these opportunities for Everton, and there's really not much of a response at all from Fulham.
No, and we were just so much more fluid, and it makes me a little nervous when I see our deepest midfielder kind of run forward, but there was enough interplay between the three that it was fine. I mean, Irabunum, to his credit, kind of allowed Gana and Dewsbury Hall space to do things. I'm not going to say he was really disciplined or anything, but also the back line was pushed up a little bit more. The gap between the lines was not so pronounced at times. And look, we took care of the ball pretty well. I mean, for the most part, in those moments, very few higher risk passes like square balls that got picked off and spring the counter. But even if they did, what is Jimenez going to do running behind? I'd like this tussle in the 42nd minute, by the way, where Tark just chucked Tete on the ground. Tete is a very good player, I think, but he's a pest. He grabs shirts, he fouls constantly, and they don't necessarily always call it because, well, it's the Premier League. So I enjoyed this moment personally.
Yeah, I think Tark has a career in WWE after, he decides to hang him up because he just absolutely takes him down. And, I mean, credit to the one thing that Andy Madley, I think, did do today is call some of those Tete fouls on Grealish, right? So, that's I feel like the one thing he did, as you mentioned, Ryan. He's just a pest, right? And I think if you're a Fulham fan, you obviously love that just because it winds up the opponent. But of course, how it's just so ironic that of all plays for Calvin Bassey to get a yellow, it's that one, right? So it's peak Premier League. But at the same time, it kind of, brings us to a magic moment, and that gets us to the goal from an unlikely source. And of course, Grealish with the initial cross. Tark, great header off the crossbar. Tim can't finish, but he did a good job. And then Gana's there to finish. And of course, as you mentioned, James, the Dan Juma, it's alive and well. The snake, and it's just a great goal, and I think a perfect way to kind of go into the half, and it's just so well deserved from the team. So credit to the Blues for getting that one past the line.
I was trying to do the snake, but also advertise our lovely mugs.
Yeah, we got mugs.
They're really nice.
Link in description.
Yeah, I mean, Gana Johnny on the spot to finish this one pretty well. Actually, it wasn't that easy to finish. I mean, there was a lot of people in the net to prevent that. But, I mean, we get in the half here. I mean, deserved, right? I mean, I thought we were far and away the better team, and it feels a little unjust with some of those waved off goals, but I just thought we were far and away the better team, and I thought you really saw the balance between the fullbacks and the functionality of the midfield. And yeah, okay, Fulham were bad. Maybe there were some uncharacteristic performances, but a lot of that was due to the pressure Everton were putting on them.
I think that's 100% right. And I think the goal to cap off the half, both the individual play demonstrated a lot of persistence from Everton because there's a lot that happens and you have to keep the pressure up and keep it high, and then Gana's there to finish it off. But then also you zoom out to the entirety of the first half, and Everton were very persistent, did not relent, continually pushing for the goal. And as you say, Ryan, I think that was reflected in some of the numbers. I mean, 0.9 XG for the first half to Fulham's 0.29. Now, 0.4 of that is the bang-bang with Tark and Gana as we score. But still, 8 total shots, 3 on target, 2 big chances, and had more of the ball, 56% possession. I also think so much of the first half, and as we zoom out, the entire match was played in Fulham's final third because we were able to win the ball back consistently high and just maintain possession, maintain that sort of consistent threat that put Fulham on the back foot. I mean, 32 final third entries for Everton in the first half alone.
Massive indicator right there, right?
And dominated them in the air, too. Won 68% of the aerials, 18 touches in the box to 7, all just show how really thorough Everton were in the performance.
I'll tell you what, too. It's hard to not watch a performance like this, and again, Fulham were substandard, I get it, and not think, man, imagine if we had a 6 that was really robust JB and O'Brien out there that could play higher at center back, and some fullbacks that really could get back and forth. And in that type of situation where, Garner is supporting on the right side, maybe a little higher. Njai had the ball a couple times just in isolation on the right side. Now, granted, he's a little wide and maybe not perfect for him because he's more of a goal threat. But having someone that could serve a ball like that is just such a deterrent in its own way. But you can see the skeletons of a fairly effective team. And a lot of credit to Tierno Barry for kind of being that fluid person in and out there. And just, there was a lot more movement, a lot more emotion, a lot more energy. And yeah, 18-7 touches in the opposing box. It wasn't all set pieces either. And even those set pieces, they were deserved because of the way we were getting the ball out wide and attacking them very much. I think it's fairly hard to ignore Dewsbury Hall's influence in the first half.
Yeah, he was tireless throughout the entire match, but in the first half he had 4 tackles and 10 defensive actions alone, just instrumental. And I think when you bring in Garner at right back, you bring Tim into that midfield, I just think that kind of upgrade in athleticism in the middle of the park did help Everton exert the level of control that we saw.
You can make mistakes with athleticism sometimes, For
sure. It helps compensate. And Garner's progression was just very welcome and level of comfort on the ball when the ball came to that side. And as you said, Ryan, you kind of alluded to it, we were able to find Njai in space a little bit, but we were also able to find Jack in space. And that's the balance Everton have been really lacking the last few matches. Is it's so predictable, but when you have the consistency down either flank or better consistency, that just opens up the space for your best players to do what they do.
Yeah, now that being said, we're going in the half. I think we'll feel pretty good about being up 1-0. Would have maybe liked to be up higher. It's hard in your brain to separate the offside calls from opportunities, but I think in this case they were marginal, so they were a more indicative measure of how we played. But so going into the second half, I'm thinking, Marco Silva's going to change something, and I think it was pretty obvious there were still some spaces between the lines that he could maybe take advantage of. And we've seen so far this year where David Moyes has not adjusted well in the second half. He's not used subs in a way to change things with his team. And so I can't help it. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, really good first half. Fulham looks dead. Is he going to keep doing what he's doing, or is he going to be conscientious of what's going on here? And sure enough, Silva came out with a very clear adjustment, I think, starting the half.
Yeah, Josh King comes in for Sasa Lucic, who's lucky to be on the pitch, right? At the end of the day, that's going to be a yellow for him if he didn't have one. It's just one of those situations where I think Fulham got very lucky, and I think Marco knew it. But at the same time, Ryan, as you mentioned, Josh King has been kind of a really bright spot for Fulham, academy product for them, has looked really good. And so from an attacking point of view, you make that sub without Lukic, of course, having the yellow. We see Everton kind of do something similar, a little bit later on in the game. But from our standpoint, I don't blame Moyes whatsoever for keeping the same guys on the pitch. I think we looked great in the first half. It's just a matter of how would we look coming out into the second.
Yeah, and funny, there was a weird break because of Madley's equipment there in the 48th. So, but to me, that was an opportunity. But it was very obvious that King was in there to play in between the lines, and Fulham's goal was to find him the ball almost at all costs. At certain points, he was literally raising both hands in the air. They still struggled to find him directly from midfield, though, and credit to Everton for staying in passing lanes, even if there was kind of that gap. A couple times Fulham just went straight to him, almost just firing it through people. But look, it did lead to a bunch of chances here, and really their best period in the match. From the 46th minute to the eventual sub out of Irabunum, it was 2-0 in shots, but there were a lot more opportunities than that where they didn't get shots off. 66.8% possession, 2 corners. King had 2 key passes and 20 touches too, and it kind of happened during this period. Now, there were still moments that happened during this. It wasn't like Everton weren't also a threat. It was just that they had some opportunities to fire back at us. Can we talk about this goal in the 52nd minute? I've got some problems with this one personally.
The non-goal, you mean? The third offside goal of the match.
Yeah.
Probably the most contentious of the 3. It's Dewsbury Hall there to finish. It's a good one. He goes full celebration because he doesn't see the flag go up. And then you see the replay, and it's very curious why this one was ruled out. Ultimately, the decision was that Barry was involved in the play. I don't think he touched the ball, but he's kind of at the near post. This is where the rules kind of blur, because it's like, how do you define someone as being involved in the play? Do they have to touch it? Do they have to impact a player who could touch it? It gets really, really confusing, I think, at this point for me. I can see the ball comes near him, but he doesn't really look to play the ball or, I think, impact anyone who could.
It was behind him. I mean, he
Right.
wouldn't really have had much of a chance at the darn thing anyway, other than the fact that he's a little bit athletic. I don't think he affects the play at all here. If he touches it, James, I guess maybe there's some contact, maybe with him and the defender, but not really. Like, he's not preventing him to get to the ball or anything. I'd have to watch this one again, but this one just didn't feel right.
How is there no review, though? I mean, Andy Madley took more time in the tunnel trying to get his headset, back up than just looking at that. So it just felt like there was just, zero urgency whatsoever from the PGMO to even look at this. So, but that gets us to the 56th minute, which is one of my favorite moments of the game. Tierno Barry, he almost had his inner Alex Iwobi, right? Essentially taking through 2 or 3 guys on. And then if there was any way to summarize a 23-year-old, it's this moment right here where he just essentially trips himself. I think he wasn't hurt. It was just more of, I think he was embarrassed that after all that good work, he just kind of, he tackled himself. He did so much brilliant work at the start of it, kind of the ultimate Everton that moment.
Thought he got snipered. I will say this, though, in all seriousness, that's the Barry that I saw a lot at Villarreal. A guy that shows incredible ball control for a guy his size, and his feet are so good. I mean, that was great to see. And I think he's a little better at doing that and going wide and finding teammates as well, too. So hopefully over time, as he gets more and more involved, people start to realize when he's got it there, he can pass it, too. He's not just going to hold on to the ball, and you can make runs for him as well. And suddenly we get a little more fluid. It was just nice to see that. It's nice to see him express himself a little bit. Also weird was the sub in the 57th minute. I don't know what was going on there, but that's not, this wasn't a Moyes Keane moment or anything, but this is a little bit odd.
Well, he brings on Muniz for Jimenez to lead the line, and then brings on Chukwueze for Harry Wilson. I kind of forgot that they had signed Chukwueze. That one kind of flew under the radar a little bit.
Muniz is not ready to go. What are you subbing him in for? Because they subbed him off, right after this.
Yeah, he played 12 minutes, and then he was yanked for Traore, which was, very bizarre. There were some rumors, or, the announcers had said that maybe he wasn't 100%, whether he's ill, whether he has a lingering injury, but bizarre from Silva to waste 2 sub windows for that.
If he was remotely healthy, you should have subbed him on a long time ago, because Jimenez is not the right guy to play against that combination. Maybe that's a little fortunate on our end. It definitely is, right? Yeah,
it is. And as you say, the subs did make an impact there, because Muniz and King kind of combined for maybe Fulham's best opportunity of the match. Pick forced into a pretty good save there, doing his job valiantly. And then what stood out to me here was right around the 60th minute, where Everton start to wane a little bit. I think you could feel the match. Fulham, as you said, you alluded to the stats earlier, Ryan, but we're still pressing very, very high. And Fulham are starting to kind of bypass the press and find some space in midfield, partially due to King's impact there. Tim picks up a card as well, and then you feel the intensity levels just start to drop. I think we started to tire, and credit to him, right on cue, Moyes is preparing Merlin Rule to come on.
To me, this is the moment of the match for Everton, as far as I'm concerned. The whole story of Moyes not making adjustments, not doing the right thing. And now, again, it's a debate, right? It's did he just make the change because of the yellow? And we know Tim is not Mr. Disciplined. That's one angle. I'd like to believe that wasn't the proper angle. The proper angle is, and you saw a lot of dialogue with Moyes and Roll on the sidelines. I think that Roll went in there and communicated with the midfield to try and take away the pass to King and be a little more conscientious of that. Roll, say what you will about him on the ball. He lost the ball. He had 7 ball losses and 20 touches, which, okay, is bad. I think 3 turnovers specifically, and the ball was not really sticking to his toes very well. However, the change in midfield made a big difference. Fulham were already struggling to build out of the back, so now this release valve is gone for them. And so the rest of the way you look at it, they mustered 1 shot. Everton had 6 in that time, 5-1 in corners for Everton, which, just soaks up time, as well as our big bodies in there as well, too, are already difficult to defend. 56.2% possession for us at that moment, too. So I think David Moyes deserves a lot of credit for this, regardless whether it's the yellow card as the trigger or not. The shape of the midfield did change, but really, I mean, they didn't seem very dangerous at this point. I guess you saw a couple things where they started to get the ball wide, and you're thinking, okay, well, now they got fresh legs out there. You've got Chuck on there. Traore is obviously fast and greased up and hard to grab a hold of. So those are issues kind of for us. But then it didn't matter, really. They sub Beto on. I think this is the right time to make this sub, maybe the right role within this team, and we score. I'm kind of curious everyone's take on this whole entire sequence.
As we were exerting this kind of aggressive press late into the second half, you could tell Barry's race was kind of run. I mean, there were times when Dewsbury Hall was just still running around like a maniac, and Barry ran out of gas. So I love the Beto sub at this point. The fresh legs, I think, really benefited us. Ultimately not in the goal, which came in the 80th minute. It's Michael Keane off the corner, and it's Dewsbury Hall with the delivery. And you have to say it's a really, really good corner, well taken. And Keno, we know he's a good finisher. Not sure he meant to hit this one off, like directly off his shoulder, but the way it comes off kind of goes far post directly over the hand of Leno. It looked beautiful in real time, but you could tell the shoulder goal is a bit fortuitous.
More the battering ram, you can play him behind. He ran a couple times in behind. The one time he got it, and Bassi, who's a beast. I mean, Barry would have probably flopped a little bit or taken the foul. Beto's like, nope. I mean, you saw Beto, just the lightning. Like when he gets moved, like his first couple steps, when he hits step 3 or 4, he really flies. This is a great service, and it's just so deserved, I think, at this point. And it just made it so the next 10 minutes were nothing, and we felt confident and comfortable on the ball at this point. And, other than this kind of Traore shot that Pick did really well with, I think, I feel like the XG of this was really high, but the angle looked really bad to me. Fulham really had no answers, I mean, Smith Rowe's not going to come in and dribble past everyone, even though that's his thing. Although they were playing 3 wingers at the time, so I got that. Jake comes in for Dewsbury Hall. Fantastic performance for him. Beto almost scores off the corner here, by the way, in the 94th, which would have been really fun. But I think Barry in general did well enough here to keep his start. I'm really happy Moyes threw him back in there. But there were some really good performances, and some of them were just really hard to ignore.
Yeah, I also think just quickly, when you look at the second half as a whole, the adjustments from Moyes, I mean, 0.11 XG for Fulham, Everton 0.51, 2 big chances for Everton, obviously scoring one of them, 6 shots to 3. Like, we just kept them at arm's length for almost the entire duration and responded with the subs at exactly the right moment to shift the match. But as you said, Ryan,
responded quickly, James. That's the nice part. The second you saw cracks in the armor, he responded in kind, and that's how you manage. You know what I mean?
Sure,
that's your job.
And there's like the eternal question of reactive versus proactive, but from a winning position and the opposition tries, they take the proactive approach to try to get back in the game. You react to counter that and just completely stymie whatever they're trying to do. And as a result, there, as you said, Ryan, a ton of good performances to choose from. Honestly, there's probably 6 or 7 starters you could go with, but I think Dewsbury Hall for me is kind of the obvious choice. He led the team in touches, had 14 defensive contributions. He was 9 for 13 in duels with 4 total tackles, all of which were in the first half. But I think overall he linked up really well in the final third. We know that his work rate is always excellent, but I think it really shone today with how high we were pressing late into the match. And when Barry started to wear out, or right before he came off, I thought Dewsbury Hall really picked it up a level to maintain the pressure on Fulham and make things difficult for them.
Yeah, and then for my man of the match, before I get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to Tim Erbunam. I thought he had actually a very good match. I know we didn't really discuss it on the sub, but it's just good to kind of, see him gain a little bit of confidence, kind of a bit of a reward right from his game at Sunderland, where I thought he was pretty compact, pretty assured. And so just good to see, I think, some of our players, as you mentioned, James, about 6 or 7 good performances that we could talk about. Didn't really highlight Tim, but 6 or 7 good performances on the team, like not Tim, like, but I mean, that could be a future segment. So, So, of course, my man of the match, good performance, is Jimmy Garner. He's just back in our good graces. Second in touches today, of course, the Kieran Dewsbury Hall, 73, which I thought was a great pick, James. absolute workhorse today. 1 key pass, 1 shot on target, 3 for 6 on long balls. But I think outside of just kind of some of the stats, I thought gave a really good technical level at right back that, of course, Jake does his best, but that's just not his forte. And really combined well, I thought, a lot of the passing sequences with him, Njai, Gana, Kieran Dewsbury Hall. I just thought he was really, really fluent with those guys. And then I think just outside of the 1v1s with Kevin, where he did get rinsed, not going to say that he didn't. Once Njai helped out, I thought he was really good in defending their threats. And once again, with James Garner, you're never going to question the effort. Was just everywhere where he could have been. A little bit unlucky too with that shot on goal with a free kick. With very, very good take. So credit to Garner. Just another good match for him.
Yeah, and I thought Ghana kind of as the other complement there in the midfield was really good in many ways. It was nice to see him have some freedom. I didn't think he'd have that freedom going into the match knowing his midfield partners. But look, he got the goal. He only killed 2 spectators with shots today. I thought that was pretty fortunate. The left-footed shot was questionable. He had it on his right. Just shoot if you're going to shoot it. 5 touches in the box, so I thought that was the most important thing. He really was measured in terms of his ability to get in there and impact the play. There were several times he had the ball in the box in very dangerous positions where it was almost unfortunate we didn't get one. But only 1 bad touch in 61 touches, 2 for 2 in long balls and 4 passes in the final third. I'd love to see how many carries he had in the final third. He had a couple, but I just thought his decisions in terms of his runs and movement were really important. I'll also say this, look, for the midfield, I still think there were too many lost possessions for our 3 guys here. I mean, Garner lost 13 times. Again, he's taken free kicks and stuff too, so that gets factored into it. Gana lost it 12 times. Okay. Dewsbury Hall 14. But to Tim's credit, he only lost it 5 times. Not 6 or 7, but 5 times. And if you think about that compared to the rest of the guys, and the one thing that Tim is really good at is he's very good at supporting possession. He gets side to side. He's very smart with his passes. He has good weight on them, and he's very athletic and can cover ground. And he didn't over dribble too many times today. There was once or twice where it was questionable, but not 6 or 7 times. And he contributed to the pressure bothering Fulham. And I think many ways we won this match due to the way we clogged up the midfield. Yes, there were opportunities to play through them and pass them, but they weren't so obvious. And maybe to your point earlier, James, the athleticism makes a big difference. But look, I mean, Anderson lost possession 11 times today. Lost all 3 of his ground duels.
Terrible. Right. Very unlike him, too, just because I think of him as one of the best long ball center back guys in the Premier League, and it just felt like they got a lot of underperformances from guys, which I don't really know if it's credit to us or just kind of a day at the office that was bad for them. But nonetheless, right, we'll take it.
They don't look good, though, Shan, do they?
No, and I mean, at the end of the day, they get a big 3-0 win at Wolves. You think their confidence is kind of, going upwards. But this is a step back for them. And as kind of Kevin mentioned in his earlier comment, not much additions in regards to the window. Also, another guy that looked terrible, Samuel Chukwueze, did nothing today, right? So it's just kind of one of those where I think Kevin was the only guy that really kind of looked like a threat. But then it kind of goes to the limits. We talk about our limits as a team. When you don't have a forward that's really, proactive in the attack, and I think you're getting a lot of underperformances from the midfield, you're going to see a lot of what happened today for them.
Yeah, spine is an issue for them. I think if they had a little more stout defensive mid and a little better center forward that could stretch teams a little bit, maybe Munoz is that guy when he's healthy. I think it makes a big difference because they have enough options at fullback. Obviously, Robinson's still hurt, but their fullbacks are okay. They have enough options in the wings. You think one of those guys would work, and Smith Rowe is a decent attacking mid if you need to bring him on at times, and Iwobi's a very good player. So there's some good elements there too, but I mean, credit to David Moyes. I think he picked the right time to really front foot and get on these guys and did it very well. And I think taking some risk there in terms of pressing high was worth it today. And I mean, especially playing at home where you knew it was going to be a little more difficult for Fulham. So credit to David Moyes and credit to the whole team, really. Some great listener comments and talking points here too. We've hit some of these themes already, but some of the angles are a little bit different. I definitely think they're worth discussion.
Yeah, we start with a sleazy Dewsbury tall boy who said strong 4-0 win. Could have been. Very easily could have been for Everton. And then he mentions Barry playing with better composure and much better effort. I think we talked a lot about Barry, but I don't know, are we all in agreement that this was a strong performance from him and that we expect to see him continue to start, at least for the next couple of games?
I mean, I think fundamentally you pick the guy with the upside anyway if the performances are close between the two. I think Beto's the type of guy that still needs to kind of get in a rhythm personally to be effective. However, he has been in this side long enough, so maybe it's not as necessary. And look, I mean, you can kind of pick and choose your time to bring Beto on and be a problem for the back line. Maybe Beto for 20 minutes just running flat out and being a menace might be even more difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say, too, Tierno Barry, I thought, had played a great game. And I'm just curious, I think as he gets more comfortable with the lineup, there were plenty of times where he made some really good runs and then just didn't get the ball in space, right? So I think from an intelligence standpoint, as much as I love Beto, I think as a starter right now, I think you need to give Barry a few more starts. But as you mentioned, Ryan, like when it comes to a guy off the bench, Beto's as good as they come, right, for a 30-minute, 20-minute spell. So I think you leave it as is. Keep in mind, as we get into December, you might be able to rotate starts a little bit more fluidly. But credit to Tierno Barry for, I think, as you mentioned, James, his best performance probably in an Everton shirt.
Yeah, and I just want to call out, I think that was recognized by the crowd at Hill Dickinson because he got a really good reception as he came off, and he looked very frustrated with himself. I think he'll have obviously wanted to score, wanted to maybe impact the game more in front of goal, but the way that the crowd recognized how influential he was, even further away from goal, after all of the dialogue and all the frustration that's come from his earlier Everton performances, I just think we maybe have reached a turning point with Barry and the fans' perception of him.
I also don't care who scores the goals, to be perfectly frank. I really don't.
Sure, as long as they go in and they don't get ruled out.
The one big chance he had was the header. He did not do well with the header. I mean, that was not. I mean, there have been some chances that I think people have exaggerated how easy. I would like to see him do a little better with that one. But again, he was trying to hammer it in at least. You don't get credit for just putting it on net. So I'm happy in that way. Yeah, I'm kind of curious what you guys think of Chris at _Fury 1878's comment here about Fulham in particular.
Yeah, his comment was that he thought we benefited from Fulham being poor, but there were some good displays. We've talked about those, and that we did well to keep Fulham under pressure. I do think you have to. You can't look at this performance without highlighting that Fulham were pretty poor. I mean, some of the times we won the ball in their third were just from horrendous passes that were directly to us, and then we were immediately back in their face. So I think there's an execution element. We know it's not the strongest team.
Or is it an issue for them, though, James? I mean, is this like... I mean, you guys have seen this team play before. I
Sure.
can't say they've looked quite this unsteady in the back in distribution, but we had something to do. I don't know. I mean,
I just, my view of them has not really changed from when we talked about them on our preview and kind of our check-in, that they've kind of stagnated. They'll be mid-table, bottom half most likely. I don't see them getting sucked into any kind of relegation battle, especially when they get a couple guys back and are healthy, but they just did not execute well today. And to be fair, they, Shan, you mentioned the Wolves win. They got a red card. Wolves did, and they got a 3-0 win, but they'd lost their prior 4 Premier League fixtures. So they're not coming into this in good form or anything like that. I do think they'll turn it around, but I just think there's too much talent on the team for them to really be down, kind of cemented at the bottom.
Yeah, and then our next talking point gets to Garrett Posts at Parrot Ghost. Garner at right back is clearly the way forward. We'll talk about that. Offers so much more in build-up. Liked what I saw from Barry and can't wait to see him score his first goal. That counts, in parentheses. Much better performance overall, exactly what the doctor ordered. Up. Yeah. So we're going to get to, is Garner at right back clearly the way forward? Your thoughts?
I think in the interim, for the next few games, it does depend on the matchups, I think, wide. Because we saw Garner's limitations as a one-on-one defender. It requires Njai to do quite a bit of work defensively, but he has had to do that kind of this entire season so far. I just think the balance, if we are going to try to control games more, control possession, I think Garner is definitely a viable option. He clearly gives you more in attack, but the if you're really just looking, if you think you're going to be kind of in a low block and up against it defensively, I still think you could do okay with Jake O'Brien. And I'm also a little bit concerned about what that means for O'Brien, the fact that he drops to the bench, comes on as a sub. I still want to see Jake O'Brien in this team as much as possible because I think he's such a talent. And whether that means Tarkowski drops, I think that would be the most logical move. Curious your guys' thoughts.
Tarkowski should be dropped. I mean, I don't know what to say. I know he's a captain. You're not going to drop him, or Moyes isn't going to drop him, but I just think we're a better team when he's on it. If we're going to play this way, up higher. I mean, I don't really see what he gives you other than leadership at this point. Now, you could argue, well, he gave us leadership today. He kept us together. I don't know. It's hard. I'm not there. Not a Finch farm. I'm not behind closed doors. I don't know what that looks like, but I don't know. I mean, the way forward is in January buying a right back. I mean, really, it's hard for me to look at that and think Garner's not a good 1v1 defender, but yeah, situation-wise, and O'Brien is better, certainly better 1v1 defender than him. But yeah, I mean, James being on the pitch is helpful. What is the result of this match if Garner is in the middle and Jake is out wide? I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess we just get offside more and probably score more headers. I also think having a proper defensive mid that could be disciplined and sit back is an absolute must as well, so that whatever right back we were to get has license to go forward. But the one thing I will say is this. There is better balance if it's going to be more of an even game with Mikalenko, if he's going to be the left back, to have Garner at right back. My issue is more Tarkowski being on the pitch instead of Jake.
I think it really comes down to the matchups, right? I mean, you look at United next or in 2 weeks, and they kind of have, Ahmad playing that kind of, I would say today, the guy that would be attacking Garner, right? And so it's just a matter of who are we playing? Because I think there are games that you might be able to get away with Garner playing at right back, given the offensive matchup that he has versus some other teams, right? So I think it's just one of those conversations I think we're still going to continue to have on this pod. The only thing, as you mentioned, Ryan, is just Tarkowski. He's just an issue in keeping him in the lineup because it really limits the current potential that this team can have.
I'll also say this. Going into this season, who are our best center backs? And so this is what's really problematic for me is I think Jake O'Brien is the second best center back on the team. So, and I don't think these two are playing so well in tandem that it merits them to stay together. Now, again, we won today and pitched a shutout. We didn't give up much. I didn't see a lot that those guys had to do, frankly. Keane, I thought, played pretty well again. I don't know. I just don't personally see it. I'm glad that Michael Keane is playing better, but I would sub Jake off for Keane for Jake as well. I mean, today, Michael Keane played great. He got the goal. But the bottom line is I'd rather have Jake O'Brien, I don't care how well he's playing, to be the guy to chase Raul Jimenez in between the lines. He's a step quicker. He'd be all over him. He can't get around him. And he has the recovery pace. I would play Jake. I don't even care which one of the two you'd sub out, frankly. I know people are going to say, oh, Keane's playing so well. He is. He is playing well. But I'm sorry. I think Jake O'Brien's a better center back than both of them. So I would pay one of them personally.
I agree. I just think for Moyes, with that spine of the team, it's going to take someone dropping their level. And I think it is Tark. Like, the evidence supports that Tark has not been good for a little while.
He has dropped his level. I mean,
but he's protected by the captaincy a little bit. And I think Moyes just has this like implicit level of trust.
There's some merit to that, right, Jay? It's not crazy to suggest, well, he's the captain. I mean, it matters.
Yeah, no. I mean, but Pickford can wear the armband. Like, I don't think that's that big of a deal. I do think if you're trying to just put our best 11, fit 11 on paper, Jake O'Brien has to be in there. But it's hard to argue with the result today. And I think, Keane getting the goal, he's the offensive threat. And overall, it was just a good performance. So he'll probably roll out the exact same lineup next match. I wouldn't expect him to shake things up.
And look, all right, we're 11th in the table today. We'll probably end up being 12th or 13th going into the break. And that's fine. Now, people also say we're 3 points out of Champions League spots. But yeah, don't give those looks. Like, people need to get over that. This is not European side, not even close. We've got to go to then after the international break at Old Trafford and Newcastle at home. And neither of those matches will be particularly easy, but they're certainly not impossible, especially Newcastle at home. And that's one where you got to think matchup wise. Does it make sense? I don't know. United is a very attacking team right now. I don't know if Jimmy Garner would be the right guy there at right back. But maybe, you saw they had a very fluid team today, I think, right? Šeško didn't play up top, right? Cunha did. So that may require a little bit more athleticism. You may not be able to kind of push up as high. And I do think Jimenez being in there helped us a lot, but we'll see how it goes. Either way, it was a great win. I don't want to take anything away from it.
We do have another thoughts and prayers segment. I'm going to start with a serious one at first, and that's Marshawn Kneeland, of course, the Cowboys defensive end that unfortunately committed suicide this past week. Just kind of a friendly reminder in terms of mental health, checking in on one another, sports. I know it's just such a serious thing for all of us. I can tell you at the Blue Frontier and the Discord, as much as we kind of argue and bicker with one another, it's a very close-knit community. So just a friendly reminder to keep up with one another and just really take your mental health as a serious priority.
Especially in the holidays, especially when the weather starts turning, things get darker, things like that. It's really important to communicate and talk to people and make sure that they're not isolated. And I think we have a strong community. I think people can lean on each other as well. But I think Everton as a whole, that's as good as it gets. We all believe this is the best club on the planet, most importantly because of the supporters. And that's how we should be. And I think that's why we do this, really. We're doing it to give back to the club. And that goes for all of us, too. We're all pretty friendly people. We're easy to reach out to and get in touch with. And, I'm not a qualified mental health professional, but I have an idea of how to get some of those in front of people, and we should take that very seriously.
Yeah. So if you're going through something, just make sure you talk to somebody. The next point on a lighter topic is Rob Edwards. I don't know what is going on with Rob Edwards. I don't know if he's having a midlife crisis. Middlesbrough, I believe, are second in the table as of today. He's done a good job this season. If this was the summer, I understand it. Wolves have 2 points right now. He's going to be announced as the manager of Wolves probably in the next 48 hours. This is only going to hurt your reputation. He just signed a 3-year contract, I believe, in the summer. So thoughts and prayers to you, Rob, because I don't know what you're doing. I do think Wolves are going to get relegated given how this season has played out, and it's not a good look for you in regards to future prospects.
Have we not learned anything from the Graham Potter job selection standards? What are you doing, man?
I think it's just kind of a calling card to managers that there is something to be said for loyalty. Well, getting paid.
What else would it be?
The allure of the Premier League is just
allure of the Premier League,
guys.
even at the bottom.
Speaking of the Premier League, Shan, this is, I think, your last element. I'm concerned. This is a Premier League proven person.
Reports say that Ben Godfrey's loan is going to be canceled in January for near bottom of the table Sheffield United. I do hope that Ben Godfrey's career, is not just kind of further plundering down the table, but it seems that way. Just a tough one.
Unbelievable that resulted. That's all I'm talking.
I know, right?
What a swindle job. That's incredible.
Yeah. And finally, finishing up score predictions. 3 correct score predictions. I'm Blue, Western, me, and Spokeland. So credit to you guys for that. And then coming up, just another international break, right? Very quick. And then we have a lot of fixtures coming up.
I think we could probably dial up some content in between during the international break, can't we, gentlemen?
I'm sure we can think of a few ideas.
We might be able to think of something.
Just a couple. Sure.
But all in all, it was good to get back to winning ways at home at the Hill Dickinson in a comprehensive performance, one of the better ones this season. So it's a great day to be a Toffee. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of their weekend. Just a reminder one last time, like, subscribe, leave us a rating and review, all of that good stuff. Otherwise, we'll be with you next time. Until then, up the Toffees.